I work for the Michigan Department of Education's Indigenous Education Initiative, where we specifically focus on indigenous youth. Are there any indigenous youth present today? Ooh, okay. One? We got one hand? You probably do. That's why I asked that question, because you probably do. How many of you have heard that your great-great-great-great-grandpa might have been some sort of Native American person? If you've heard that, raise your hand. Look at all those, that many more hands went up, because it's okay to not really know. A lot of people don't really know. Like he said, I'm not sure, I think. That's kind of how things were structured, so that you kind of didn't know. So I want you to embrace that. It's okay to do that. So the story I'm going to tell you today, I was trying to think of a title for it, and I brought some artifacts, if you will, and I didn't want to plug in. I did that on purpose. I wanted to ground ourselves in story, and I wanted you to have your hands on some things that I brought today to be able to look at it and not look at a screen. It's hard, right? I have my phone right here, and if I see an alert, I'm probably going to glance at it. But I'm going to try not to do that. I'm doing it for time. But so I did that on purpose. I did it to be intentional. And so the title that I thought of on the way down here was From Res House to White House. And I'm going to tell you the story about how I grew up on the reservation in Mount Pleasant and how I ended up at the White House just a few short weeks ago. Maybe it's been longer than that. COVID has my time frame all sorts of messed up. But we're going to go back to that, and I apologize right now because I don't know your stories. All of you have stories that I don't know, and if I say something that, and I don't like to use the word triggering because it's not always bad, I'm going to say some things that maybe bring up some happy memories for you that you can relate to. There's going to be things that I say that sound really hurtful and sad almost. It might engage those feelings with you, and if that happens, then I apologize. I'm here to share my story, and if there's an issue, then definitely one of your teachers can help you out there, because there's some really heavy stuff. So going back, Res House. I was raised on the reservation. I didn't have running water growing up. We didn't have electricity, and we could barely afford groceries. So we lived in the country part. Our whole family lived there. My grandparents, my mom, my dad, my siblings, hundreds of cousins. Probably not hundreds, but pretty close. We're all smashed up into one house. And we had a wood stove that they would start to keep us warm. So we're talking Michigan, right? You all know it gets cold here. And my uncles, who all also lived with us, would hunt with my grandpa. So we ate a lot of venison growing up because they would hunt for things. And we would cook it right on that. It was like a barrel turned sideways, so it wasn't like a fireplace. It was like a barrel turned sideways that they would put wood in, and they would put the meat right on top of it. I'm just now able to eat venison again because although it is delicious, I got real sick of that when that's all I had when I was growing up. For water, we would fill up buckets from the cemetery that was down the road, because if you've ever been to a cemetery, usually they have running water so that you can water flowers and such when you're at cemeteries. And so I grew up that way, but I don't ever remember being poor. And somebody asked me, and I kind of got defensive about it, because they said, "Oh, that's so terrible. I can't believe you didn't have your basic needs met." Like, what? Because I didn't have the luxury of all those other things, and even as an adult, I don't remember feeling poor. I don't remember feeling hungry. I don't remember feeling unloved. And all of those, and I had a shelter. So I had all of the things that I felt like were my basic needs met when I was younger. How my family did that and fostered that inside me, I don't know. I could ask them, what did we do? I don't know, we just survived, we lived life. And so that was the Res House. I was all through high school. I graduated in 1995, back in the 1900s. And it wasn't really that long ago in my head. For some of you were probably born then, right? What year were you born?
2007.
Way past 1995. So yeah, okay, quite a ways back. But still, there were phones, there were TVs. We never had a phone or any of that all through high school when I graduated. And I would wash my hair in well water and buckets and try not to use too much. It was so cold, I get a brain freeze every time. But nobody at school knew that that was going on either. I didn't talk about it, but they didn't pick up on it. And so I went through high school and I barely made it out. There were so many distractions and things that I was going through because although I did feel loved in my home, I also saw a lot of abuse. I saw a lot of domestic violence, alcoholism, drug use, things like that. Not directed at me, but amongst the grown-ups that were in survival mode during that time. And so I think about that now and people ask me, how did you turn and get into the life that you live now? And I have an answer for that, and I'm going to share it with you when we get to the White House part. So I grew up like that. I moved out when I was 16. How old are you all in here? 14, 15? So another year or two, you would have already been thinking right now, how am I going to get out of here? How am I gonna do this? How am I gonna go out and escape all of these terrible things that are happening? Because I knew in my head that it wasn't right. I don't know how I knew that. I just knew it. And so I did. I moved out when I was 16 and lived with some friends of mine and graduated that way. Without that, I wouldn't have graduated high school. I can promise you that. But I also knew in my head that turning to drugs, alcohol, gangs, because I had an opportunity to do all of that, but I didn't. And so we struggled. A bunch of young people moved out, kind of the same situation, and I graduated, thanks to them and their support and them not wanting to see me go the wrong way. Even the friends who were doing those things, I'd show up at a party, they'd be like, "What are you doing here? You are not supposed to be here. This isn't the place for you." How did they know to protect me that way? They cared about me. I know that now, because if they didn't, they could have brought me in with them and I could have been doing all that stuff. So then they'd make me go home or somebody would drive me home and I didn't really get to hang out. So I graduate high school, first one in my family. I was not the oldest grandchild. My mom and my dad split, so my dad's in Texas, I think when I was 11. But on my mom's side, tons of cousins, all these people that lived together. First one to graduate high school. That was a big deal. And then I thought, you know what? I made it through high school. And I also knew the stereotypes about me and my people, indigenous people. We're drunk, we're lazy, we do drugs. They get pregnant and have a bunch of kids really young, like all of these things. And I knew those stereotypes and I knew the statistics about what was expected of me. And in the back of my head, I'm like, nope. That's never going to be me. Stereotype 1, check. I graduated high school. They didn't expect me to. Second thing, had my 20th birthday. Check. I wasn't a teenage mother. So I shattered that one. And then I wanted to go to college. And so I went to college, first at a community college. Community colleges, I will advocate for those all day, because they're there to help you. I didn't know college. And then I got accepted at Central Michigan University for my undergrad, and I wanted to be a teacher. So I went to CMU. And this is the flag they gave me when I graduated. I still have it. I graduated in 2007, elementary education. But it wasn't like I just applied and I went and I graduated and happily ever after I'm a teacher. I got kicked out. They call it dematriculated, I believe is the word for that. And I got kicked out because my grades were not good. When you don't know anybody who's been in college and you don't have anybody to ask and they just think you know what you're doing, that's how I felt. So I took volleyball twice. I'm like, should I take clogging? I had no idea the classes I was supposed to take. I just took what I thought looked cool. I'm like, oh, and I know you're supposed to take math. And everyone's like, well, why didn't you go to an advisor? I felt shame in that, and I don't know why. I can't ask for help. That's shame. They're going to know that I don't belong here because I know that I don't belong here. So didn't make the GPA, got kicked out, went to Mid-Michigan Community College, which is also in Mount Pleasant, and they were like, here's how it works. They laid it all out for me. Here's the classes. What are you supposed to take? All those other things don't count for anything. It doesn't count for graduation. And so they walked me through how to do college. Because if you are sitting in here and you don't know how to do college, doesn't mean you're not going to get there. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful. If you have nobody to ask, you know what? We're connected now. Ask me. I'm going to leave my contact information too, because someday you're going to say, hey, I remember that lady that was in there and she said she'd help me. And you reach out and I will help you the best I can. So they walked me through that, went through, and magically I got all A's. And I made excuses about why that was. Well, they felt sorry for me. I had like this imposter syndrome. Number one, I'm not supposed to be in here. Number two, I'm not supposed to succeed. And three, I got kicked out, so maybe they just felt sorry for me and I got all these A's. That's what I thought. So I graduated from there in 2002, I believe. And by then I had my first son. I was married and all that good stuff. And so he was on my hip in my graduation with my associate's degree picture. That's my oldest son. So then I got those excellent grades and applied again. Now that was a brave thing to do. I applied again at CMU. Are they going to let me back in? They did, with some conditions. I had to meet with somebody once a week and make sure I was on track. But this time I had an idea of what I was supposed to do. So I got my teaching degree in elementary education. I graduated in 2007. 2007? Yeah, because then I had my second son. And he's on my hip, and I have my other son next to me in that graduation picture, which I should have brought, but I didn't. So then I start teaching at our tribal school because I always knew I wanted to teach tribal students because there's hardly any tribal teachers, indigenous people. How many of you had an indigenous teacher before? One person? Awesome, that's good. I didn't expect to see any hands because there's hardly any of us, or so we think. And that was my purpose. I wanted to go so that I could talk life and speak life and empower life into the kids that aren't supposed to graduate, the kids that are supposed to turn to gangs and turn to drugs and alcohol and all of those things, to let them know that they can do it. That was my purpose. So I taught in tribal school, and teachers will fill me on this one. I realized then that teachers unfairly did not have everything they needed to be successful to help you guys. Like, what? What do you mean I don't have any social studies stuff? Can I go to training? Nope, there's no money for that. There's no money for anything. I just got to invent these things. And so I thought, that's not fair. So then I transferred to administration. I was the education assistant director for the tribe's education system. And I did that with the purpose of helping not just the kids, but the teachers. Because they need what they need to do a good job for all of you, and they do the best they can, trust me, but if we had everything we needed, we could be doing a much, much better job. So I thought, I'm going to do this to help teachers now. And so I did that, realizing I need another degree. I need a master's degree. So I applied again at CMU, and I was the assistant director, thinking I'm going to learn from the director while I'm getting my degree, only for him to resign 2 weeks after I got there, or they didn't renew his contract, something like that. And they're like, all right, Melissa, you're up. I'm like, what? I don't even know what paperwork I'm supposed to fill out or do, but luckily I had some really good supportive people there, and I continued to go and get my master's degree. I have 2 kids, and now I have my 3rd daughter, and I get my master's degree, and in my picture are my 2 sons and my daughter on my hip. So now I have my master's degree, and that's the graduation picture there. So I'm doing that work, get promoted to director, and realize that there's a lot of things happening in the school over the course of this whole time. There's one thing that's really keeps me up at night. I lost years of sleep over, and that was all of the unfair, really hurtful, sad things that are happening in the lives of each and every student that I had ever worked with. Not knowing what to do. Because when we go to teacher school, Back then, they didn't tell us how to help you guys when you're having those difficult times, when you're carrying that heavy load of things. They don't teach us that. And so I immediately engaged to mom mode. So back to my first year of teaching. My first year of teaching, I'm going to make sure that everybody at that grade, second grade, 8 years old, you're going to learn how to read, you're going to do all these things because I'm here and I believe in you and I know your families. And that's not the reality. That first year of teaching, and I can just now tell this story. I couldn't tell it before because I would cry every time. I had 8-year-olds, and one of my 8-year-olds, his father was a veteran, very young family, and he committed suicide in front of them in their home. And we were like, it's a small community. It's the res. Everybody knows everyone. And the kids are talking about it at 8 years old because he's not back yet. So I think, what do I say? What do I do? So we talked about how he could be when he came back. He might not want to say anything and he might just totally shut down. You do not ask him about it. He might, that's all he talks about. It'll make you uncomfortable. The adults will handle that. He could come in and be super angry and cuss us out and throw chairs, and it's going to make you feel scared. The adults will handle that. So we went through all the different scenarios that I could think of, and he came back, and he was angry. And he would cuss out his, classmates, and he would turn over tables. He was sad. He was heartbroken. It was a difficult time for him. And so the kids were so understanding, and they knew because we had that discussion when he would be like, B word. I don't know if I can say that word on camera. He'd call him the B word, and the kids are 8, and they're like, oh, and they would just sit there knowing that one of the adults was going to handle that situation, and we did. But on those particular difficult days, I would take him into a different room. We tried not to engage mom too much because who's also devastated from that? Mom. And so I take him into the room and he curls up. We were on the floor. He curls up in my arms and he is pissed. And he starts crying. And he begs me to bring his dad back. That is heavy when you've never been trained and you're not exactly sure what to do. So my paraprofessionals are wonderful, wonderful support people to help you. She saw what you just saw in my face. Like I said, I can tell it now without just completely breaking it down, but I still feel for him. She comes in, she holds him, and I go into a closet and I bawl my face off because I didn't know if it was okay to cry in front of him. You're supposed to be the grown-up. So then I come back and we take turns, and I'm like, why didn't they teach me how to handle this when I was in teacher school? Nobody talked about this. So I'm like, he's got to work through all that. Same school year, different story. Little boy's mom has cancer, and it's bad. And they know she's got limited time. So right before Christmas, and they're hoping she'll make it to Christmas because that was their holiday. Their house was like the gingerbread house that you see in people's neighborhoods. They had it all. She didn't make it. And right before Christmas, she left. She passed away. So we have the same talk again. I'm like, all right, you guys, we all know this happened. He might be this, he might be that. This is how we're going to handle it. And he comes back, and he's totally quiet, but not like, how kids can be when they're really sad. Like they kind of have their big jackets and their hoodies on, and, they just disengage from everyone, the whole world. He just sat there, just like him, just like you. He just sat there. No anger, nothing. That one worried me more than the last one. But I didn't know what to do, didn't know what to say until one day when I was sitting in the front of the class, they were lining up for lunch. He comes up and he whispers in my ear and he's like, my mom passed away. Or no, my mom died. And he just looked at me and I saw the little, his eyes get wet a little bit. He didn't cry. He walked into the line and went to lunch. He trusted me. Of course, I bawled my face off. because I knew that moment he felt comfortable and safe telling me. And I said to him as he walked away, I know, buddy, and I'm so sorry. Because I didn't know what do you say? So then I'm like, I am definitely not supposed to be a teacher. Like, this is like, I don't know what to say. I think teachers are just supposed to know. My teachers always knew what to say, I thought. And then I transferred to the principal. Remember, promotion, I went all the way up. Then I'm the principal, and that year, the reason why I was a principal was because we had all this turnover. Principals would come, they would leave, they would come, they would leave. And so then, this one particular year, I'm like, why does everybody keep leaving? Are the kids that bad? I knew there were no bad kids, but like they're giving them a run for their money, and I don't know what's going on. Maybe they don't appreciate them because they're not, an indigenous person, or maybe it's a male and they want a female, or, just trying to think of all of these things. So then when they left, that meant I had to go there. And so when I went there, one year, there were about 13 kids in our 5th grade. 5 of their fathers passed away, different reasons. Not an exaggeration. And that sent a wave of grief through our school, because that was somebody's uncle, somebody's cousin, somebody's neighbor, and there were siblings in younger grades. And then I said, we need help. And I don't know what the help is. So I pulled together all this information. I took it to my boss, and he's not an educator. And he's like, okay, well, thank you for letting me know. And my goal was to get a counselor. So he leaves. I'm like, all right, we'll just continue to do what we do. Like, apparently he doesn't get it. Maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe we're just supposed to know. And then he called me the next day, and he said, I'm sorry, I didn't know what to say. He's like, Melissa, you guys are in crisis. And then that validated it, and then I cried my face off some more. I'm like, we are in crisis, they're hurting, I don't know how to help them. And so we pulled together everybody, all the smart people that we knew, and we said, what are we gonna do about this? And so we wrote for grant money to get more than just a counselor, because we needed more than that. Got told no a bunch of times, which frustrated me. Why doesn't anybody care about our kids? I continued. This is over the course now probably of 4 years. But I didn't stop trying because I knew they needed it. We apply, and then we get a call. You guys are accepted for 5 years, $9 million to help your kids. And I was like, what? But also believe that's why we were told no for all those other things, because they were way smaller. And I prayed about it. Prayed for the kids and their hearts, and we need help. And so we got that help. And so now they're in year 4 of that grant, Project Aware. And I get a call from the director, and she says to me, Dr. Jill Biden would love to meet you for the work that you're doing. And I was like the First Lady Jill Biden? Like, as if there's another, right? Like, I was just all in shock. Like, really? Yeah, she wants to visit your community and hear from you. So I said I'd pass these around. I don't know if there's going to be time. Sorry, I talk a lot. She came and she talked to some of the students, some of the families, some of the teachers, the counselors that we hired, because she loved that people saw a problem for young people in their mental health and their emotional health, and wanted to see who it was and what we were doing. So that was in October of last year, a few months ago. So that's the end of that story, right? I'm like, all right, cool. Well, then she calls. Somehow we made an impact on her, and I just got this today from the White House. It's kind of neat getting White House mail, because she invited me to the State of the Union. I don't know if you all saw that, or if you watch it. I know when I was your age I didn't, so I don't blame you if you didn't. But then I got to meet President Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden together for the work that I did for the young people. So I wish I could get into all of that. It was an amazing experience. Their priority is youth mental health, and they saw what we were doing and appreciated it. I was there because of the kids. I was there because of our youth. I was there because of a lot of reasons. But that's how I got to the White House for that big event. And that's how I went from my res house to the White House. And I guess I'll end it there.
4 minutes, guys. We can open up for questions.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions? What did I eat there? What does it look like in the White House? I ate crab cakes. Anybody's interested in that? Yes, they were delicious.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
If there was one thing you wished the social studies curriculum taught students about Native Americans, what would it be?
One thing?
Okay, give us your list.
It would be for you all to understand, and maybe you do, I'm just making an assumption here, that the land that we're standing on and living on and playing and working on is, there were indigenous people here, and we are still here. So we only go so far with that. We say, all right, these tribes a long time ago, we're still here. I'm here. And we have tribal nations that are thriving and doing great things for our communities. And, you know, it's not that there's a hierarchy or anything, but when you talk about race and ethnicity, like, oh, black, white, Native American, Hispanic, we also have a political protection because of that, because of the land. I'm a citizen of the United States and the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe, and that's powerful. A lot of people don't know that or honor it or respect it, and I wish that they would teach that so that everybody had an understanding of what that meant in their lives.
What are some things that we can do to help the indigenous community?
Some things you can do. So here's what I want you to do, because thank you for asking that. This is what I want you all to do. If you have a cause that you lose sleep over at night, that just bothers you, it could be anything, find a way to help out. That's what I've done with a lot of things, but there's going to be one thing that you really, for years, will lose sleep over. Find a way to provide a solution. Pull people together, because you can't do it by yourself. That's what I did. If I would have never got invited to the White House, I would have still been proud of the work that I did. It just happened to be that I got invited to the White House for it. So in order to be a good ally, you have to know how to engage civically. And that's the way that you can start now, is to be active in your communities, volunteer. I used to think, yeah. When I was your age, I really did think, okay, that's garbage, but whatever. No, really, do it, because there's truth to that. Had I not engaged civically, this would have never happened. So engage civically, engage with indigenous people in their communities, and see what's important to them. And if there's ways that you can support and help, then by all means do it.
So in our community, as you can see, there weren't hands of people identifying as indigenous. How could they connect with the community? Because you're saying engage with it.
Yeah.
What would be a way to connect with the community, or places and organizations they could see so they could highlight the voices and amplify what's being said by the community?
30 seconds.
Okay, y'all got social media? Every tribe in Michigan and all over the nation have social media sites. You can read from there what's important to them. And if something resonates with you, they usually have like events and activities, or you could help from afar. Yeah, you witch. Yeah.
So much